Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about file organization. It is absolutely crucial that you get your files organized correctly before you start editing a certain project. I know you'll probably be excited to get into the edit. You want to take your files off your drives, just throw them on your computer somewhere, jump into the editing software, import your footage and go. But I promise you it is a good idea to get everything organized. Now, when you're just starting out and you're working on smaller projects, it's probably not as big of a deal getting everything organized, but as your projects start to get bigger and bigger, you start to do bigger projects that have more media, more assets, where you're dealing with graphics and stills and sound design and music, and you're working with a colorist, or all those things can combine and can make your project files look really, really crazy with files all over the place. And so you want to make sure they get all organized so that it's easier to work with. In addition to that, when you come back to a project later, so let's say after you finished a project, you might have a client that comes back 2 or 3 years down the road and they say, hey, we want an edit, or hey, we need that asset, or we need whatever. If your files are organized and all set up right, then you should be able to go in and open up that project without any problems. If not, you're going to have all these broken links. You're going to have to relink all the media. You might not be able to find everything, and that gets a little bit crazy. So let me jump here into the computer and show you kind of how I structure my files, how I organize them to keep it nice and clean and tidy. So you'll see here I've got a project open from Stein Erickson, one of my clients. And this is the drive that I'm working off of. This is one of my archive drives, so I'm pulling up an old project from about 1.5 years ago. So I've got the archive drive here, and then at the top level of all my archive drives, and in fact all of my drives, I have at the top level is each client. So if you look at, for example, we'll go in here, so you'll see that there's a list of clients, and I have a folder for each client in there. And then inside each client, there's folders for each project that I've done for them. Now, this is a little bit different in Final Cut because it uses libraries. And so when you import footage into Final Cut, it will automatically put it into a library for you. You can control that, whether you want it to go into that library or if you want your files to go in folders next to the library, which is what I would recommend doing. But it just depends on your preference, what you want the software to do for you. So at the top level, we have the client here. Here we have our project folder. And then inside the project folder, I have this. Now, the important thing to note here is that I've got folders built out for every type of media inside the project, because otherwise this can get really crazy with different file types all over the place. So you notice that there's a project folder here. Inside the project folder is where the project files stay, so I can click on those to open them up in Premiere. And then outside of that, we have folders for every type of asset. So for example, there's a sound folder here. So all the files from my sound designer. There's a stills folder here. So when I'm working on projects, a lot of times I like to export stills and I use them on social media or on Instagram or wherever. We have a video folder. So this is where all of my video assets go. So this was a 2-day shoot. We've got folders for day 1 and day 2. And inside those, we have all of our red media files. And then there's some files from color and some proxies I created as well inside there. Moving on up here, we have our music folder, which is where our music is for the video. We've got a graphics folder. So this is housing right now the logo for the client. And then we've got up here a color folder. So since on this project I worked with a colorist, I sent them all of my files and got them color graded, and then they sent them back so that I could work with them. Inside here I have all the files that I sent to them, plus all of the files, the colored clips that they sent back as well for me to work with. So you can see as these projects get bigger and you start working with other people, whether it be colorists or sound designers, composers, it starts to get pretty crazy as all these files start to come together. So that's why it's important to have them all organized into folders like this. And then next up, we have an exports folder. This is where I'm exporting each draft of the video. So I'll export a draft, send it to the client, get their feedback on it, see what they think, maybe do a revision here and there. And then once I get revisions from them, then we'll do sound design, music, we'll do color, and have revisions for each of those. So those are all there. And then once the project is completely finished, that's when I export everything into this final exports folder. So this is the folder that I end up actually delivering to the client. So you notice that in here, there's a video files folder, which houses all of the video files that I'm sending to them. So we have a 4K MOV, a 4K MP4, and an HD MP4. So I'm giving them a few different file types that they can work with. I've got a stills folder. So for our clients, since we shoot in high resolution footage, we actually give them high resolution stills as well. And those are just stills from the video that they can use on social media or wherever. So I give them that folder as well. And then a footage folder here, which is similar to the stills. We give them little clips that they can use for whatever they need. And then this last file here at the top is actually just a little text file that tells them exactly what each of these video files in here are for and how they should use them. So as you can see, as projects start to get bigger, it becomes more and more important to keep things organized and keep them into folders so that it's easy to come back and find things and so that you're not losing your media. So for example, this project is one that I did about 1.5 years ago. I just opened it up in Premiere and you can see that everything opened up just fine. The video plays just fine, no issues because everything linked totally fine. Now, if I go back in here and change the file path of one of these folders. So for example, let's go to our graphics folder. I'm just going to change the name of this graphics folder to graphic. I'll just take off the S at the end. What that's going to do is it's going to confuse Premiere so that it breaks that file path and then it doesn't know where to find those files for that logo. So when I go back into Premiere, you'll notice that this clip here at the end, which is where the logo was, turned red. And then it's going to pop up this window here that's asking me to relink that media. Now I'm going to click cancel right here to show you something. If that window doesn't come up for some reason or you come into a project where you need to relink media, you can always do that by finding the media in your project window. And you'll notice that this one has a question mark on it. I can right click on that, click on link media, and then that will bring up that window. Now the way we're going to do this is we're going to click on the file that we want to link. We're going to click on relink others automatically. What that's going to do is when you link this file, if there's a ton of files that you need to relink, it will automatically find those because you're giving it the new file path. So now we'll go ahead and click on locate, and it's going to bring up a window here for me to find that new file path. I'll click on the graphic folder and then click on the file and click OK. It's going to find that file and relink it, and you'll notice that it is showing up just fine now. So there you go. There's how to organize your files. Once again, this is very important so when you come back to a project later, you're not having to relink all that media, you're not having to take care of all that, or you're not, even worse, losing files. This is why you don't want to store your files all over the place in different places. Like I've seen some filmmakers that will have files on their desktop, some of them on their drive, some of them are on media somewhere, and they're all kind of linked together into their software, and it just gets really messy and it could cause problems down the road if you ever need to come back to a project or reopen it. Or get something, edit a new clip or something for a client. So make sure to keep your files organized. It'll really help you out in the long run, especially as your projects start to get bigger.